What's up, guys? Trevor Hunter here at Dirt Bike Test. We have Tyler Belknap, and we're here riding the 2024.5 Husqvarna FC450 Rockstar Edition. We spent the day here at Fox Raceway, spent some laps on this newly updated machine, and some thoughts about it. But first, we're going to kind of go over some of the bigger changes they made to this new bike. They updated the frame and chassis heavily to kind of just add more flex to the whole bike overall. It's something we kind of found on the 23 to 24 generation 450, that softening up the chassis feel really made a lot of progress with this generation KTM and Husqvarna, and so they kind of went and did that with some changes to the head tube area, the frame overall, and then a lot of the changes were also in the linkage area. They thinned up the link arm and put smaller bolts in, as well as they changed the swing arm. They shaved some material off the swing arm as well for some added flex. And also get a better overall chain torque positioning. So the front of the chain slider isn't quite so tall and abrupt, which will help with the chain slider wear, which we encountered on the old bike. It also will help kind of just that chain torque feel and help smooth up that chassis as well. So a lot of the changes were to the chassis. And another big change, or big addition I should say, is the addition of the Husqvarna Ride app, which allows you to change some of the motor mapping and change the overall engine feel, as well as a partnership with Lit Pro that kind of ties in, the engine's characteristics and the stats and whatnot around the track and help you with lap times and stuff. So it's just pretty cool. But to kind of start things off first, we'll talk about the motor. What do you think of the motor?
I thought early in the morning when it just kind of came as is and we were starting to ride it, I had a little bit of trouble with the throttle being so responsive and all the power that this bike had. And later on in the day, we went in the app and we changed some of the engine braking. We added some engine braking in, and I also changed to a dry, more hard pack mapping for it, and it was a lot more tameable and a lot easier to ride. Along with, we played a little bit with the throttle response and tamed that down a little bit too, and this bike became really smooth and a lot easier to ride later in the day when it got harder and a little bit drier. It was just a lot easier to just maneuver the motor and not have to worry about the aggression in that front wheel just picking up off the ground from how much power it had. So it was really good and really easy to go into that app and switch everything, which was awesome.
Yeah, so I'll kind of give you a quick rundown of the setting we're running on that Husqvarna Ride app. So we put the track type in hard pack. We left the track condition to dry, and then this is kind of where we and him differed. I preferred the engine braking on 2, a little less engine braking. I've ridden a lot of 2-strokes lately, which don't have much engine braking. So I kind of went back to the lighter engine braking, whereas he preferred the heavier engine braking at 4. And then we both had the throttle response at 1, which is light, and I put the traction control at 1 as well for me, because I don't really like having that traction control. I like to be able to kind of do it with my wrist and kind of feel the bike for myself. So like I said, hard pack, dry, engine braking I was on 2, he was on 4, throttle response on 1, and I had the traction control on 1, and it comes standard with 3. So that's kind of the rundown of the mapping. And overall, really strong power plant, very, very fast bike, but very smooth linear power delivery, which kind of makes it easy to ride. And at times it will almost catch you off guard at how fast you're going, just because it is super smooth and easy to ride. But overall, very good power plant. We have no complaints with the engine. Like I said, especially being able to change the mapping with the app, really just kind of fine-tune that motor a little bit more to the track conditions and kind of what we preferred. Really went a long ways. And something cool I like with the Husqvarna app as well is just how simple it is to use, like you said. Some of the other apps out there can be a little overwhelming with a lot of numbers and values and whatnot. And while it's really good because you can really fine-tune kind of how the bike runs and really dial it in, at times it can be kind of overwhelming and almost scary or daunting to play with it. Whereas this app, it's all the sliding scale, 1 through 5. It just makes it really simple and easy, and I think a lot of people will like that aspect, is how simple it is to kind of go in and change it, and you're not going to mess anything up. It just makes noticeable enough changes to where it'll either hurt or help the performance depending on what you're looking for, but it's not going to be anything overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of my favorite features, like Trevor said. Some of the other apps are a little more confusing to run if you're not used to, working with those type of things. Like, I don't have too much experience with those. And going on to that one, it was easy. It was just a scale. You just move and adjust more or less of whatever you want, and it has it all labeled for different settings you can change in it. And it also gave you suggestions with dry, sand, gravel, a few different to play with, and it was super consumer friendly.
Yeah, something cool too is with that Lip Pro and everything too, is it shows you kind of your throttle openings, how often you're in each gear, and with that Lip Pro integration, it tells you where on the track in particular this is happening. So it's really cool. You could see you're hitting this jump and this gear at this % throttle opening and whatnot, and you can see, for me personally, I was in 3rd and 4th gear around the entire track. I never hit 2nd, never hit 1st, never hit 5th. It was just 3rd, 4th, all back and forth all day long, and I thought that was pretty cool. And you can see your throttle opening. So at one point, mine said 101%. I don't know if I was quite so accurate, but overall, it seemed like it was pretty accurate, and it was pretty cool just to be able to see that data and kind of the RPM ranges you're riding into. I know for off-road riding and for what we do in particular, running lights and whatnot, being able to see kind of what RPM we're operating under, and you can determine how much lights you could power or stuff like that, is a pretty useful tool. And it's just cool to see that if you're kind of over-revving the bike, you can see, okay, I'm riding in this RPM range, which is probably a little too high, or if you're not revving the bike enough, you'd see you're riding too low of RPMs. So just really cool data that this app provides you with, and I think it'll be really beneficial once people kind of get a feel for it and pay attention to start learning from it and kind of adjust how they're riding and potentially see quicker lap times. Moving on to suspension. The suspension settings were updated. The components are the same, but the settings were updated to match the new chassis, and overall they worked pretty good. It's a 450 motocross bike, so it's pretty firm and a little stiff at times. But overall, we got a pretty good setting in. For fork air pressure, we run 10.5 bar, which is standard. And then sag was right around 105 or so. For me personally, I took a turn of preload out to drop around 108, probably right around 108. And that kind of helped balance the bike out for me, but I was like a little lower in the rear. So it's just more of a personal thing than anything. And we messed with the fork clickers a little bit. I think we might have softened them 1 or 2 clicks by the end of the day. And then the high-speed compression on the shock, we took half a turn out on that, and that kind of helped settle the bike down through the screw edges under acceleration, and it helped us squat a little more and cornered a little better as well. So kind of overall just softening the bike up in that kind of direction. But what do you think of it?
Yeah, I was running kind of a little closer to stock when I originally got on it, and I played with the clickers a little bit, but as the day went on, the suspension continued to feel really good out of the box, which is kind of usually something I struggle with, is finding a comfortable setting, and this bike felt really level and just easy to get on and use and ride it as it was. And with the clickers being as easy as just your fingers switching them, it was super easy to pull off and play with clickers a little bit on the track, and it was overall a really comfortable bike.
Yeah, overall really well balanced, really good setup bike. It was a little firm at times, but for the most part it handled it pretty good, and there's a lot of big jumps here and whatnot, so having a stiffer setting was much appreciated at times. Moving on to the chassis, again, we don't have a ton of time on that 23 to 24 chassis, so you don't have a ton of experience to kind of relate to it. But from what I've heard and a little bit that I have ridden on the older frame, is it definitely feels like there's a lot more flex in this frame and a lot more forgiving for the average rider. I know on our project bike, off-road bike that our vet riders are riding, they did almost everything to kind of find more flex in the frame. They put engine mounts, triple clamps, just all sorts of stuff to kind of just give it a more forgiving ride. And this bike now kind of comes more ready to race, so to speak. Another big change they did is they hauled out the engine mounts as well to give a little more flex. But just from that, mainly the frame and swing arm updates and linkage updates that really you can't do to the old bike. Those seem to really help this bike a lot, and something we weren't really overly complaining about with rigidity today.
Yeah, absolutely. After riding the off-road shootout, we rode the last year's KTM, and like Trevor said, we changed a lot of the frame mounts and some other things to try to help get a little less rigid of a feel out of the bike, and this bike definitely seemed to have a lot more of that less rigidity feel, which I found really comfortable, especially when you're out there where it's a lot harder pack here at Paula later in the day, and it just felt a lot more comfortable than the little time I had on the year prior bike.
Yeah, so overall, bike is a really solid platform. I think they made a huge step in the right direction as far as kind of what the consumer needs out of a motocross bike. The softer frame feel, easier to ride engine, I would say. Being able to adjust the mapping, I think, is really cool, and just how easy they made that mapping changes as well. Be really cool for a lot of the average riders. And overall, just a really solid platform. Pretty impressed. I'm not a huge Austrian bike guy. Like, I don't always tend to agree with kind of the Husqvarnas and KTMs and whatnot, at least out of the box stock. But today is probably one of the most comfortable I felt on one of these bikes. So yeah, overall, really, really good day. And thanks to Husqvarna for having us out. And we look forward to more testing at dirtbiketest.com.
If you liked what you saw in this video, come check us out over at dirtbiketest.com on the webs. We have bike tests, product tests, a lot of fresh dirt, and you can even support us by clicking through our links. Hopefully, we'll see you out in the trail.